Thank you, Senator Honorable Merrick Garland. I want to thank you for your continued support of public service. It's been wonderful, and we appreciate very much your position. Sir, on voting rights, I've always believed that healthy democracy depends on a voting system that is accessible, free, fair, and secure. While history is going to tell us that we've come a long way in ensuring all individuals, regardless of their race, sex, or political affiliation, have the ability to cast their vote, we can all agree that we still have a lot of work to do. I'm particularly concerned about the recent opinions and rulings that seem to undercut decades of established legal precedent under the Voting Rights Act. Specifically in February, a federal district court in Arkansas ruled that only the U.S. Attorney General has standing to enforce Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. The court found that it would be inappropriate to imply a private right of action to enforce Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. So your opinion on that, sir, with that interpretation, or you agree, disagree, and what impact, if any, could this ruling have on voting rights if this was adopted across the country?
Yes, very good question, Senator. On the first question, normally I don't sort of opine, but in this case I've already opined, so I don't think it hurts any to do that. We have filed across the country in a number of these cases. We believe there is a private right of action to enforce the Voting Rights Act. It has always been assumed that that was the case since the act was passed in the mid-'60s, and no one has ever questioned it, I think, until this year. To the second point, the consequences of the Justice Department being the only ones who can bring voting rights cases, I'm going to be blunt, you're going to have to give us a lot more money. If the Justice Department has to bring every single case to enforce voting rights, we're going to have to...
You know, the argument about that, sir, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the argument about that, you hear the pros and cons on that. They're saying, well, there'd be too much litigation. You know, and if you had everybody being able to declare that they've been infringed upon. And we don't see that going any further than that. We're having all these discussions in our committees, but we're trying to get a clarity on that. But it seemed like to me that the person has that right, but it hasn't been exercised if it's been frivolous. I haven't seen it go any further, so I don't know how it's been a strain on the court system.
So I haven't done an analysis of the court system, but this has been the rule that we've had all the way since the mid-'60s. I've never heard any complaints that it is taxing the court system in any particular way.
Sir, if I could switch you a little bit on that, that's very helpful. We're working on that. On the price gouging, we hear a lot about price gouging right now, and we saw that with when we first had when we first had COVID brought to our attention. A horrible epidemic back in March of 2020. We saw that with N95 masks, Clorox wipes, toilet paper at the beginning of the pandemic, and now we're seeing it again this time with fuel prices and food prices and things of that sort. Should there be a criminal price gouging statute?
Well, this is a matter of huge debate and antitrust and economics. I'd like to hold off on that, but our staff would be happy to work with
Right now, what constitutes you all basically taking it under your surveillance, if you will, acceptable prices for scarce products? What constitutes acceptable price for scarce? Market demands, things of this sort, global pricing?
So for us, the questions are unlawful agreements to fix prices and exclusionary behavior by monopolists and near monopolists. So if we're in either of those circumstances, if it exclude competition, that falls under the antitrust laws, and likewise agreements on prices between competitors.
And I want to follow up also on Senator Collins concerning on the opioid epidemic. Myself and Senator Capito in the state of West Virginia, we've been number one as far as getting slammed with this. Can you speak to the status of DOJ's current efforts to curtail the opioid crisis, including the Appalachian Regional Prescription Opioid, or what we call the ARPO Strike Force?
Yeah, so I think that's and I hope you agree, I think that's a very effective task force. That money is included in our requests for funds. I'm not sure whether that's the one that comes under the Office of Justice Programs or under the Criminal Division, but those task forces both the meth and heroin ones that Senator Collins was concerned about the last time we spoke, and the opioid one that you're talking about.
We need your support for that, sir.
And we support expanding those, and if we get the money requested in the budget.
Very quickly, I want to follow up with, I introduced the DEA Enforcement and Authority Act that would amend the immediate suspension order standard of review from a substantial likelihood of an immediate threat standard to a probable cause standard. That's again, order standard of review from a substantial likelihood of an immediate threat to a probable cause standard. So what additional authorities do you believe DOJ or FBI need in order to effectively stop the flow of prescription opiates and other illegal drugs? Because the substantial likelihood is pretty darn broad, and probable cause, we know exactly what their intent are.
So I haven't been directly involved in the question of the standard here. Our Consumer Protection Branch does the work on...
If you could look, we have that piece of legislation. I think all of us have been, our states have been ravaged by this horrible addiction that we have, and drugs continue to flow. It might give us a better chance to fight this opiate onslaught or drug onslaught. But if you could look into the language, if you all could support, and that's the DEA, it's the Enforcement and Authority Act.
All right.
Senator Manchin, thank you.
We'll be happy to do that, Senator.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, General, for being here. Could you pull that mic closer to you, please?